Hello and welcome to the Moonshots podcast. It's episode 279. I'm your co-host, Mike Parsons, and as always, I'm joined by the man himself, Mr. Mark Pearson-Freeland. Good morning, Mark.
Hey, good morning, Mike. Good morning, listeners, viewers, subscribers, members, Moonshots family, Moonshot pets, Moonshot merchandise wearers such as myself. Welcome, everybody, to show 279. Mike, we are ticking off these numbers, and this time we've got another massive show for all of our listeners, don't we?
We have a massive show, and I think it is really designed for those who find themselves in a life that feels like a roller coaster. And with all the variables, permutations, and interruptions, sometimes we get this little thing that you and I call, Mark, called monkey mind, where you can't stop thinking about things. Perhaps one might argue you're overthinking things, right?
You're right. Sometimes when that roller coaster of life is rattling around, some of us think, I'd like to have a bit of a break. Or maybe I can get off for a little bit. But
yeah, we think this, Mark, right? Because we start thinking, well, if this happens, then I have to be over here, and then I need to do this, and then what happens if this happens, and if this doesn't happen? Oh my gosh, this is so crazy.
That's it.
And here's the great news. We've got a show to bring you back into the now. We've got a show and an author that if Eckhart Tolle had a son, well, this show is done by him.
That's exactly right, Mike. The book that we're digging into now, if you excuse the pun, is Joseph Nguyen. That is Joseph Nguyen, for those who don't have the video in front of them. Joseph Nguyen's Don't Believe Everything You Think, Why Your Thinking is the Beginning and End of Suffering. Now, Mike, I reckon this concept is very relatable to you and I. This idea of your thinking being the means to essentially kind of create your own suffering. You know, we've spoken about the greatest battles that you've ever, done are within your own head rather than out on the battlefield. We've made reference to this, haven't we?
Yeah, you almost quoted this famous mindfulness quote about the greatest trespasses and suffering a man has ever experienced are those that have yet to happen.
Beautiful.
And it's just this whole freak out that we do about something that may or may not happen in the future, but we almost experience the dread, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But actually, Mark, it hadn't happened, but we experience it. So these thoughts are very dangerous. And this first clip you've got really helps us reconsider how we think, what is a thought, and I don't know. This is really going to challenge us. So let's dig into it.
Well, yeah, you're right, Mike. Let's better let the author himself, Joseph, explain to us where he's coming from with this book and how he can set the scene for us. Because ultimately, this catastrophizing monkey mind of ours can be pretty dark and sometimes a little bit painful. But ultimately, what Joseph's here to remind us is that thoughts are harmless. So let's hear from Joseph, kicking off today's show with an insight about thought not being reality.
Do you believe everything on the internet? So then why do you believe every thought that comes to your mind? There are over 60,000 thoughts that we have in a given day. How is it possible that every single one of those is true? Our lives are determined by the thoughts that we have, but not by the thoughts that we have, but the thoughts that we believe to be true. Thoughts themselves are harmless until we believe that it's true. So instead of trying to manage your thoughts, manage your beliefs in the thoughts. Thoughts aren't reality, but the thoughts that we believe in become our reality.
Oh, so there is so much to unpack in this, Mark. And it feels like we're about to go to see The Shrink together with 50,000 of our listeners, but let's do it. So, oh, gosh. So the way I'm relating to this, Mark, is the amount I mentioned fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which is something that we all experience, right? Particularly if you're really going to make a go of things in life and try and be the best version of yourself, then that's like a stretch goal. It's a really big stretch. So you're going to get in uncomfortable situations. And the way I'm thinking about this is you can have a thought, this may happen, that may happen, etc., etc. But it's when you believe those to be true. What I think he's really talking about is when you pre-experience failure, uncertainty, and doubt before it actually transpires.
That's it.
Now, let me kind of just build on this for a second, Mark. The interesting thing that we learned from Dale Carnegie was how to stop worrying and to enjoy life. Is he talked about, like, ask yourself what's the very worst that can happen. And invariably, the very worst never does happen, right? What would be the worst? Let's put death aside. What else would be the worst? Lose my job. Okay. Well, news for everyone. Almost every person has more than one job in their life, so there's going to be a second job. Say you lose your house. Well, then you go to an apartment, right? Like, you can go through all of these things. And those things that I just mentioned rarely happen to people. Yet, we spend so much time worrying about them, experiencing, and I think the key thing here is we allow the emotion in the front door, and then it becomes a reality of, you almost feel the emotion of, oh my gosh, I might lose my job. You feel that, but you actually haven't. So you're going through the complete experience of saying that thought is true. I will experience all the fear, uncertainty, doubt, despair, but actually it has not occurred.
You're putting yourself through that punishment unnecessarily because you're
Yeah. It's unnecessary. But then what do we do, Mark? Do we only do that once a day?
Well, I certainly don't.
I think that's true for us all. Isn't it crazy how many times in a day we entertain the worst case scenario about personal interactions, professional interaction, about basic life? Yet here's the thing, none of them actually occurred.
Look, this whole topic, Mike, and we've got loads to get into with Joseph today. I think it's so rich to be able to explore and to be able to share techniques that you and I, and I'm sure all of our listeners, have multiple methods and behaviors as well as to how to combat this monkey mind, this catastrophizing inner narrative that we punish ourselves with. As you were talking then, it reminded me of a truth that I think we've run into on the show before. And Joseph certainly picks up on it in this book. And that's how, as he just called out, emotions kind of follow thoughts. So if you continually, we've talked about the coffee percolator. You know, if you continually live in quite a negative mindset, you're probably going to influence the way that you feel, maybe even your health, because you're living in quite a negative space. And what Joseph does, I think, a good job of in some of the clips that we've got today, as well as his book, is help us reframe those inner thoughts into something more positive. So as you were just saying, I might lose my job, I might lose my house. The reason why those are things that we project into our inner narrative, because they're things that you care about. So if you have a doubt about doing a particular job, well, hey, rather than thinking, I'm going to fail at this, instead think, hey, this is great. I really care about this job. So I'm going to do my best and therefore not allow that horrible negative situation to happen.
Yeah. Now, one thing I want to say there is the difference between caring and allowing the emotional response. Insanely practical thing I tried to do, and I've been working on this for a couple of years now, is this technique of it's just a chess game, it's just a puzzle. So this enables me to abstract a situation if almost I'm a coach looking at myself, rather than a kind of being full emotion in the hand-to-hand combat of life, right? I try and go, it's just a puzzle. And this immediately makes me go more like cognitive, analytical, have a plan, take action. Because, sometimes someone could be rude to you, and regardless of their intention, you feel harmed because of that. But if you go, okay, it just is what it is, it's a puzzle, I've got to figure it out. It's a way that I just shift myself out of, how dare they, right? Because that's your ego kind of going, oh, you were just looked down upon, mistreated, whatever the trespass is. So I like this idea of it's just a chess game, it's just a puzzle, think it through, game theory, and just remove yourself a little bit. And then this comes to a great mindfulness practice of detachment. Like if you're highly attached, and another justification, let me pitch you why thought is not a reality and how this is so important. If you think about the greatest athletes in the planet, are they the over-emotional, overhyped ones? Or is it the cool, collected?
The ones who are sitting there with 2 seconds on the buzzer to go. And you know what they do? They step up, they don't freak out, and they get the points.
They were prepared.
You're
MJ.
right. Preparation.
Yep. So if we do want to make it the buzzer beater shot, if we do want to be our best, rather than allowing yourself to catastrophize about what may happen, rather than indulging in fear and uncertainty and doubt, just do the work. Because when you've done the work and you're a bit knackered, you can say, I'm knackered, but I'm satisfied because I put in the work and like, hey, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like
that Mike, is one of my all-time go-to behaviors. Whether you and I, we're preparing for a pitch, presentation, a workshop, if officiating a wedding, whatever it might be, speaking in front of other people, instead of allowing yourself to think this is going to be a nightmare, I've got nothing to say. You prepare it, you write it down, you practice.
Yes.
Yeah. And that for me is what removes that monkey mind anxiety just a little bit. It probably won't be entirely gone.
Yeah.
You need some of it good, don't you?
You can be excited.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be anxious. And you can shift that through preparation. And it's really funny. We talk about hard work. I can think of one group of people who are really putting in some hard work, Mark. Can you think of some association? I mean, I'm feeling trumpets for some reason.
Feel trumpets rising, the sound of celebration for individuals. And I think those individuals, Mike, are our Moonshots members. So let's give a high five to all of those individuals who are not believing everything that they think, and they're turning up each week to dial in to the Moonshot Show. Bob, Dietmar, Marjan, Connor, Lisa, Sid, Mr. Bonjour, and Paul, Berg, Kalman, Joe, Samuela, Barbara, Deborah, Lasse, and Steve, Craig, Ravi, Yvette, Raoul, Ola, Ingram, Venkata, and Jet, Roger, Steph, Raw, Christoph, Laura, Gayla, Mike, and Zachary, Austin, Ola, Andy, Jasper, Fabian, Guhong, Eddie, and Lars, Mohammed, Marco, Ken, Ryan, Tryman, Natalie, Jason, Malcolm, Emily, and our brand new members, Joanne and Edwin. Guys, thank you all for being with us with the Moonshots member family. This show is for everybody who listens, and the master series that you guys have exclusive access to is just for you guys. So for those who aren't yet members, make sure to pop along to moonshots.io to find out a little bit more.
Very grateful. Thank you very much for your support. We love you guys. We are very, very thankful for your support. And that helps us figure out our intentions. And that's actually the theme of this next clip.
That's right, Mike. So the next clip that we're going to dive into now is from Joe again, Joseph, who's going to help us understand a little bit more around the connection between intention and our emotion.
Most of our actions we do are quite automatic. We don't really think about it. We just go through the motions. And that can be good to a certain extent because our bodies are just optimizing for efficiency. So we just automatically do what we need to do in life. But if where we are in life, if we're not happy with that and we're constantly feeling some sort of negative emotion or going down a specific spiral, it's important to question our actions. And more importantly, the intention behind our actions, because that ultimately determines how we feel about it. A specific action is neutral, let's say, the majority of the time, unless that thing is highly toxic or damaging to us. But let's say it's something as, or it can be as neutral as going on our phones or social media. The act of going on our phones is not necessarily bad. It's just What is the intention behind picking up the phone? Is it to call a loved one? Is it to distract ourselves from the present moment, or because we're bored, or whatever it is, to escape whatever feeling that we're experiencing at the moment? So you can see how the action of picking up our phones is neutral, but the intention or why we are doing it changes how we feel. So most of the time, we're most likely bored or distracting ourselves from a specific thing we're experiencing in that present moment. And what that does is it actually perpetuates that specific emotion. So let's say that we feel like we're not good enough, or that or we feel very anxious. Picking up the phone will only perpetuate that specific emotion if the intention is using it as a distraction. So for me, what I love to do is to catch myself right before I make any specific action that is automatic, that doesn't always necessarily lead to a desired outcome. I catch it right before I do it. And what that allows, and I actually question it. And what the question allows me to do is to open myself up and create this little space between this intention or this specific thought and then action. And in that space between thought and action is infinite possibilities. And what I mean by infinite possibilities is an infinite possibility to choose a different outcome, to choose whether to pick it up or to change the intention of why I'm picking it up, or to choose to not do it at all and to do something else. And that's why questions are so powerful, because they break the programming that we have. And let's say the programming is, I'm bored, I pick up the phone. A question will intercept that specific pattern and allow you to have a choice in life and to choose something different.
So it's so fascinating, Mike, that he talks about the power of a good question here.
Mm.
And something I try and do in my journal is in the morning, I try and ask myself, how do I want to show up today? Right? With an emphasis on the how. So I'm just going to read you a line from my journal this morning, which I said, today, I'm just going to be open. I'm going to be calm, and I'm going to be a great listener.
Mm.
Now, the reason that I wrote that was I really like this idea of asking yourself a question for your journal. And in specific, the entry was far longer than that, but this was the parting thought I had, because I was meeting, two really, really important people today. I met a world famous Red Bull athlete today, had a meeting with them, and also met a very successful founder of like a hot Australian startup. So two great people, and I was really excited. And I know that if I'm really excited, sometimes I talk too much. Sometimes I rush to conclusion in excitement. So you can see like the intention that I tried to set for myself was like, okay, how am I going to turn up? And I just wanted to be like super natural. I wanted to be myself. Mostly I just wanted to hear what I could learn from them, what they would share with me. And I actually really enjoyed both conversations. And I think to some small part, intention helped me. I didn't think about, per se, trying to like not speak or to be an active listener. It was a bit deeper than that. I kind of made a promise to myself, this is how I'm going to show up today. And in some strange way, I didn't really need to revisit that thought. I'd set the intention and it sort of played out like that. So what I want to ask you is, what's an example of situations for you where you really use questions to set intention about how you go about doing things in life? What comes to mind as you think about this?
Well, you touched upon it after the first clip that we heard, where you contextualize that anxiety quite quickly. So, for example, what if I mess up? What's the worst thing going to be? So instead, you can think of, okay, well, instead of it being a thought that's going to be detrimental to me, I'm going to catch that, as Joseph says, and maybe redirect it. I'm a big believer in trying to pause before reacting. I'm a little bit similar to you, Mike. I don't actually have those prompts or those ideas that I write down in my journal. I'm going to start doing that now because I think that's a great idea to set the intention at the beginning of the day. But I very much try to remind myself when I am in the moment to pause before reacting rather than allowing my brain to jump into action and say, hey, let's go. I try and have a little bit of, I guess, a buffer zone.
Yes.
But the big thing for me, and I think you also touched upon it just then as well, is replacing those negative thoughts. And it's something that mindfulness really drives your consideration towards as well. Replacing hard judgment on yourself that might be negative in tone with curiosity. So I try and remain open to the way that I feel and the way that I react to whatever the given situation might be.
Yeah, can you give us an example of how you'd see that?
Yeah, so let's say that I'm at work and I get tasked with an action or having to do something that maybe I've never done before. Maybe I'm a little bit embarrassed. Maybe I'm thinking, hey, everybody else is younger, or maybe they've got more experience. Why can't I do it? Why can't somebody else do it, in fact, and let me save face? And instead, rather than negatively punishing myself, saying, Mark, you're always worrying or you're always doing this, instead just think, okay, well, I've got curiosity at this moment. It's a growth opportunity. Let me try and utilize not only the action that I'm about to go and do as a growth opportunity, but also even the act of thinking, as I think Joseph's sort of guiding us towards, with a chance to get a little bit more patient with myself, that is.
Yes. So your intention is almost like a reframing.
Yeah, that's a good synopsis, actually. You're right. The intention is, rather than allowing yourself to go too far down that path and think in that dark way, act with curiosity, reframe it into something that makes a little bit more peace, I suppose.
Yep. Absolutely. And it's really powerful because, look, even if the outcome of how you behave in a situation isn't, with retrospect, wasn't quite how you wanted to show up, if at least you set the intention.
Yeah.
I think human beings sense good intention.
Yeah.
So I think they will forgive you any boo-boos that you make. For the most part, people will kind of feel like he's trying, this Mike guy, he's stumbling around a bit, but I can kind of see he's trying to do the right thing. So I'll cut him some slack. Okay. So now this next clip, we talk about ramping that up a bit, because we're just talking about everyday situations here. But Joseph has got some thinking about when the stakes get bigger, and sometimes we're a bit tempted by our bad habits, aren't we?
Look, bad habits have a sneaky way of getting back into our life. Even though we might be following James Clear's work and getting 1% better every day, those bad habits sometimes do have a tendency to kind of stick around like a bit of a smell. But we've got this next clip, Mike, with one of our favorite YouTubers. Our listeners will be familiar with Productivity Game. He's got a great interpretation as well as a direction of breaking down into Joseph's book. And we've got 5 key steps in this next clip, helping us understand how to pause.
Imagine you and your friend are both driving to important interviews. Midway through your trips, you get flat tires at the exact same time. Your friend's mind immediately starts racing. This is a disaster. I'm going to miss the interview, lose the job, and never recover. They slump against the car, overcome with hopelessness. Meanwhile, you step out of your car to look at your tire and have the thought, yep, it's flat. Your mind starts feeding you stories about how bad the situation is and what it means for your future, but you simply choose not to believe those stories and let them fall away. Then you calmly call the interviewer and set up another time. Same event, same stakes, but your friend is suffering and you're not, because your friend let their thinking take over and you didn't. This echoes what the Stoics have said for millennia. It's not the events that disturb us, it's our opinion of them. An overly opinionated mind is a mind in overdrive. Picture your mind as a car engine. The more thoughts you have, the higher you push the RPMs. When you hold too many strong opinions, you start redlining your mental engine, and it won't be long before you burn out completely. The key is to take your foot off the pedal and let your mind calm down by executing a PAUSE, pause. In the book, the P in pause stands for pause and breathe. But I found a different P to be more effective: physiological sigh. Stop whatever you're doing and slowly take a deep breath in through your nose. Fill your lungs completely, then take another sharp inhale through the nose. Now make a long, steady exhale through your mouth, like a deep sigh of relief. This breathing technique is called a physiological sigh, and it's a powerful research-backed way to reduce stress and reset your nervous system in under 30 seconds. During the exhale portion of your physiological sigh, execute the remaining pause steps. A. Ask yourself, is my thinking helping me feel the way I want to feel right now? If the answer is no, move to the next step. U. Understand that thinking is a choice. You can choose to drop your thoughts at any moment. S. Say this mantra to yourself to remember what's at stake. Thinking is the root of my suffering. E. Experience what you're feeling without judgment. Stop resisting your thoughts or emotions and just let them wash over you. Imagine you're standing waist deep in the ocean, feeling waves crash into you. The more you allow yourself to feel, the faster the waves of thought calm down and your mind becomes still. Simply feel what you're feeling without adding judgments, opinions, or stories on top. After the pause, you'll find yourself in a different mode, no longer overthinking, just present.
I feel relaxed just listening to them.
I mean,
I think it's like the power here. I mean, we've talked about a number of themes already, but the power here is you don't actually have to think. You can just be in the present. The power of now, as Eckhart Tolle would say, but also the greatest athletes talk about that the game slows down in these moments. So we should slow down, right? And isn't it powerful how breath, Mark, is like part of that equation?
Look, breath, we've covered a lot on the show, Mike, and it's something that I know our listeners have. I think we've even done a live breathing exercise on the show before.
We've talked about 4-7-8, coherent breathing and box breathing, yeah.
And this physiological sigh, as Productivity Game calls out, we spoke about it with Andrew Huberman. But Mike, I want to ask you a question. Which of those 5 steps, pause and breathe, ask yourself, understanding you've got that choice to let go of the thinking, say and repeat to yourself a mantra, that thinking's that root of suffering, and to experience your emotions fully and be in the present. Which of those do you think is the secret sauce to managing and being a little bit more mindful?
I can only tell you that I need a bit of all of those, Mark.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
But I actually think that for me, with this general excitable engine that I have, I just need to stop, take a breath.
I'm the same.
If I do those things, Mark, then like I can access the other ones. I think I'm one of those people. Like if you have an excitement engine, then what happens is you have this tendency to throw yourself into 5th gear with everything. And that's then, if you do that with everything all day long, then you're just a bit knackered at the end of the day. And then you get up and do it all again. So I think that the B is for me. What about you?
It's the ask yourself. And I think that goes back actually to the prompt that you were having your own journal. And I just want to read it out again. Is this thinking making me feel the way I want? Do I want to keep suffering? So having that in a moment of grief, in a moment of stress, anxiety, frustration, annoyance, whatever it is, I'm going to try and ask myself and think of those pauses, of course, but then think to myself, is this what I want? Is this the best version of myself that I can be?
Right.
Is this thinking that I'm forcing myself to have going to cause me unnecessary, pain? And I think I'd probably be surprised, actually.
I think you're absolutely right. Because I think there's not very much stillness in our lives. I mean, without sounding terribly cliched, we're always on. access notifications, emails, you name it. So just pausing is actually more important than ever. And in doing that pause, I think you can take the pressure off trying to have the 6-pack abs, the side hustle, and the 3 homes, which is exactly where Joseph goes in our last clip, right?
That's right, Mike. If you think that your life is always sitting on the gas stove, burning fully and bubbling away in the pots, and the steam is coming out of your ears because you're so driven and trying to get that train into the station on time. This last clip, I think, is an invitation, Mike. It is a reminder to all of us from Joseph, a little parting gift, I guess, after today's episode, to remind us that if you're not being present at the moment, you're not being the best version of yourself. So just take a moment, maybe pause, and stop putting so much pressure on yourself.
Don't put so much pressure on yourself to always be following your intuition, or to always be making the right decision, or to always be making the one decision that is most aligned with your soul, whatever you want to call it. It's just unnecessary. And the reason why is because that will only lead you down a path of more thinking. And the truth is, God, the universe, life itself, whatever you want to call it, will always prompt you and bring you back to this state of being in the present. It will always bring you back to your intuition no matter what. And it will give you feedback through the form of suffering, usually. So if you're not on the most aligned path, or if you're not following your intuition, life will tell you. Life will just knock you down. Life will essentially prompt you through psychological and emotional pain. And that is how we know that we're not on the path that we're most aligned with. And so don't always worry unnecessarily about trying to make sure that you're always following your intuition, or that you're always doing the most spiritual thing you possibly could, or that you're following the most aligned path for yourself. All of that honestly doesn't really matter, because you're always going to be guided back onto the path that you're meant to be on. And that's always in the present moment. And so let go of that. Allow yourself to not follow intuition for a bit and see what happens. And you'll slowly notice that you're always going to be guided back. We always have this inner GPS that brings us back to the present moment, that brings us back to who we truly are from that state of non-thinking. And we will always be guided back to peace, love, and joy. All you have to do is trust it, and to let go of anything else that gets in the way of it, including worrying about trying to be most aligned with it, or trying to follow your intuition all the time. I know it seems a little paradoxical, but give it a try. I'm not asking you to believe this, but to try it and see what happens. And from your own experience, you'll know what's true for you, and follow that.
Joseph delivering the goods on the final clip. Mark, I think what he's really getting into here is what we call in the mindfulness practice detachment. So there's nothing wrong in saying, hey, I'm going to buy a house in 5 years and have a big plan for that. But once you've made that underlying goal, you need to almost, and this is the juxtaposition that he was talking about, you have to put it aside, stop worrying about it, and just get on and do what that is. If that is today, getting a second job, or getting a promotion, or investing into stocks, whatever it is that's going to get you to that house. So the thing that gets us a bit crazy is we just become totally obsessed about the goal, and we are not present and not enjoying the moment, not doing the thing we need to be doing now. For example, another one, I'm obsessed about winning the Super Bowl, but I'm so obsessed about it, I'm not doing the training properly because I'm too distracted thinking about the Super Bowl confetti. You know what I mean? This is kind of how detachment looks and feels. And so it's almost like you set your big, hairy, audacious goal and you need to put it in a box. Otherwise, then the worst thing is it's like weight loss. You said, I want to lose 25 pounds. If you're only thinking about that, when you lose 5 pounds, which is a great achievement, feels like not even halfway there. That feels terrible.
Yeah, big time. And that's similar to where we go with James Clear, isn't it? Break these behaviors and actions that you want to try and put into your life into smaller pieces and celebrate those little wins, right? Celebrate the fact that today, hey, you know what? I didn't have sugar, or I laced my shoes and went for a 1K. Whatever it might be, it's those small little steps that then encourage you to get out.
Yes.
And gradually you start feeling pretty good about yourself. And then you realize, hey, that's a habit that is, either an action or a way of thinking that suddenly I can now repeat because it feels less scary. Sometimes starting off and getting those six-pack abs, hey, surprise, it's a little bit uncomfortable. And that for me, Mike, is always what puts me off getting a six-pack.
Oh, I'm going to use that as my excuse now. Thanks, Mike. That's great. I've needed that for the last 50 years, actually. Okay, so you brought up some good points there. I mean, instantly I think about like themes like compound interest or the compound effect by Darren Hardy, sorry. So we've talked about a lot of those themes. So if you are very interested in some of these adjacent authors, Eckhart Tolle, James Clear, etc., head over to moonshots.io and you can pick those up. But as we think about what we've heard, what we've really discovered in the study of Joseph Nguyen is a bunch of ideas that we can put into practice. So, Mark, if you were going to do one thing better as your personal homework assignment, what's that going to be tomorrow?
I think it's a build on the A from pause, like I said, about asking yourself, questioning whether that suffering is self-imposed or not.
Yes.
And building in a little bit of journal questioning on my own regard, setting that intention for how I want to be in the day. And specifically, to tie back to Joseph, make sure that I don't go down a path of catastrophization and instead call out in the morning, hey, today is a day to not get yourself into the coffee pot of dark thinking, and instead it's a positive one. What about you, Mike?
I'm looking at the list here. Probably stop putting so much pressure on yourself, right? Just be a bit more intuitive, go with it, be present, see what feels good, don't overthink it,
Yeah, I think a lot of our listeners and members would probably agree. That's probably the one that you stand out when you take a step back at the end of the year and you think, I wish I'd celebrated getting that job.
But what about all the other good things that happen?
Yeah, there's tons of stuff that have kind of passed me by, and then you don't realize it until the event's passed and you think, oh, hang on, that was kind of special.
Very true, very true. All right, Mark, a huge thank you to you pulling together those 4 great clips. I feel a weight is lifted. I'm sure you do, and I hope you do too. Our members, listeners, and viewers, I hope you've deeply enjoyed show 279 of the Moonshots podcast, where we've studied the work of Joseph Nguyen. Don't believe everything you think. We had 4 big ideas. Thought is not reality. How your intention can determine your emotion. How to pause. And hey, guys and gals, stop putting so much pressure on yourself. Do this, be present, and you will discover that you're already able to be the best version of yourself. That's what we're all about here at the Moonshots podcast. That's a wrap.